All right, everybody, welcome. This is like the ultimate crossover episode between Church Advance, Worldview with J. Michael Lester. So welcome to Mike Lester, and then Financial Pathway with Nate Skelly. And I'm just honored to be a part of it. So Nate, say hi to your audience, and then also the tens and tens of people that are getting introduced to you right now.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. It's good to be on the crossover episode. I think once upon a time, all of us were in a room somewhere at West Coast Baptist College, but it's nice to be back in the same room virtually with everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So Mike Lester, how about you introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm excited to have this conversation today with the one and only Dr. Bryan Samms and Nate Skelly. Of course, Luke helping us as well. Excited just to be part of this conversation.
Yeah. And then, of course, the my frequent, I guess, host/co-host, the man himself, Bryan Samms.
Hey, welcome back to the Church Advance podcast today. I'm so excited to be on this screen. I know we were at probably some kind of like Monday night Devo event together, or probably certainly a soul winning rally. I guarantee you we were all in the same soul winning rally at some point together. But I'm so glad to see your podcast, Mike, ramping back up. Worldview with J. Michael Lester. How cool, Dr. J. In the house, and congratulations. I don't know if I've even really seen you or talked to you much since you did cross the finish line. We like to say in this world, we have earned doctorates, and it's just a cool thing to say. Doesn't mean much, I don't think, but it's a cool thing to say. Hey, so this episode's unique because it's going out to all these podcasts. So for everybody on Mike's and Nate's podcast, I'm Bryan. Hello. You can check me out at Church Advance. You got Financial Pathway with Nate if you've never met Nate. And then, of course, the new podcast or the revamped podcast with Mike Lester. Today's topic for all of us is relational discipleship. And I know this is going to launch close to the time of recording. And when we were off air getting ready to record, I brought something up that I thought was just so apropos to relational discipleship in the recent passing of Dr. Toby Weaver. And I'm saying it with a smile on my face because this whole week has just been a testament to a life well lived. I mean, we all, me and Mike, we were colleagues together. At least I was in the mix for 9 years, I guess. And Mike, you and Toby, I think even longer. I mean, yeah, of course. Were you guys at Crown together?
No. But
okay, so
West Coast for quite a while.
Yeah, when you got there, he was already there, right?
No, he came after.
Okay, so you preceded him. So you obviously had a longer relationship with him, but I was, there for 9 years, and you guys, of course, Nate and Luke, you guys were students. And the thing that's been striking me this week, first of all, Toby Weaver to me was a very genuine, very passionate, and very funny guy. I mean, he was, super. I remember one of the last times I ever heard him preach. I don't even know what he was talking about, but he started talking about digging. I don't know if you guys were there. He started talking about digging. He's like, act like he had a shovel. I don't know if he was talking about Abimelech and Isaac or whatever, but he's digging. And he says he dug all the way to. Well, you know what I'm going to say. He dug all the way to. Stuck all the way to China, and then he said he grabbed the Chinese dude and said, "How'd you like Pearl Harbor?" We were all like, "What? China? It wasn't even China, dude." I mean, he was kind of crazy like that, but man, he was just this great guy. And what I've noticed this past week was so many guys, some of them who aren't even in church, man. Some of them who aren't even serving the Lord in any capacity, just singing his praises, expressing their gratitude because he loved them, he cared for them. And I thought I'd open up with that. Well, anybody got a word there just about Toby Weaver as we give him a shout out? And Mike, you go ahead. I can see it.
Yeah, what I think of, I often think about him as Mr. Matchmaker. And even just this past week, like you said, all the shout outs. Les Wall, who was another colleague there when I was there, talked about how he traveled with Dr. Weaver on a tour group. Angela was on that group. He asked if he could put them side by side so he could get to know her a little bit better. They started dating, and then he was in their wedding. That story was repeated over and over again. And then, of course, he met my parents. My dad pastored in Georgia for many decades, and he would bring tour groups there. And my dad called me one day and said, "Mike, you're not going to believe this. I walked outside this morning. They had sung at the church the night before. My mom had cooked breakfast for the group the next morning, and they were going to go on to the next church. Toby Weaver was out in my parents' yard with his suit on, mowing the grass for my parents. And he was, he was past retirement age. He said, "Brother, looked like you've been busy. I wanted to help." And he's just out there cutting their grass. It's just classic. He's just a great servant at heart, believed in everybody, and he had such a unique way of making you feel like you were the most important person on earth. And he was a joy to work with.
I got to hear some student perspective, Nate. Maybe I'll start with you. I mean, Dr. Weaver is a legend. So what you got there about Dr. Weaver?
I will not be able to do it justice to eulogize Dr. Toby Weaver, but you just see this huge outpouring of love, and everybody's got a story, right? And I think that's what makes somebody that much more impactful, because everybody's got a story, not just about something that Toby Weaver did, but a personal interaction that they had with him. It's not just, I remember one time he did this thing in a message or whatever, but it's like, I remember this interaction I had with him on a personal level, whether it was in his office or on campus or on tour, or different things like that. And actually, as you were talking, Bryan, it reminded me just not long ago, Tim Butterfield passing away. And I think very similarly, those two guys, like they were people persons, everything about them was relational, and they cared deeply, and you can't fake that. I think there's certain people that are very impressive to us because of what they can do from a pulpit, what they can do from a lectern, what they can do from an organizational standpoint, and you respect them, but you don't feel a connection to them. You don't know them as a person. But with Toby Weaver, what you see is what you get. And you knew that he cared deep down, that he was passionate, that he loved the students, and that he really did want the best for everybody that he came in contact with. And I think that's evidenced in the wide variety of people who maybe didn't always see eye to eye with Toby, in life, but coalesce around him at the funeral because there was that personal aspect to it. So, yeah, those are my thoughts as a former student. And lastly, stay in Crete, because that is
sons.
Yeah.
You need Crete.
Yeah. Well, Nate, you beat me to that one, because that's what I was going to remind you. Is everybody has the infamous "Stay in Crete." I think it was just like his signature, one of his opening messages, whether it was men's devotion or
I think it was like first men's devotion of the year. Yeah, that was always the message.
Yeah, that's right.
Of course.
And think about it. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, you got to get one, Luke.
Well, I was just saying, my thing, but Toby Weaver was, and it's rusty. I had an impersonation of him that everyone seemed to adore. They liked it. So what I would be asked to do from time to time was to call certain troubled students and impose as Toby Weaver and get them a little concerned of their future at West Coast Baptist College. I think, Nate, you might have been in the room for one or two of those
I missed,
phone calls.
I was in the room for a lot of prank calls, but I missed the Toby Weaver ones.
Yeah, I will. I cannot confirm nor deny that I prank called people often. But calling as Toby Weaver was became one of the requested ones. And I had a certain student very concerned that he was about to be expelled.
Hey, Luke.
Yeah.
Luke, you did a pretty good Dr. R too, as I recall. Yeah, trying to get out of the chapel chair. That was a great one.
Yeah, that's another classic. That one that one resurfaces every once in a while on Facebook. So all that to say, but in all seriousness, the thing I remember, the Stay in Crete was his famous one. But for some reason, I remember my first men's devo with Toby Weaver. And the reason I remember it is because I was like an emotional mess my first day of college, like namely because I had this high school girlfriend that I had to leave, and I was just heartbroken about that, right? We broke up like 2 days later, but you know how that goes. And so I'm just like, oh man, like this is so hard. College is so hard. I mean, he had this message, and I don't think it was staying Creek because it was a little more gracious. And he just said, essentially, find grace for your place. And he said something effective. If you're having a hard time and you need to curl up in the top of your bunk and just pray and cry, that's okay. I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. And for whatever reason, that just is what I needed at that time. But like Nate, you were saying, well, everybody's going to say, but Nate, like you knew that beyond just what he said behind the pulpit, like he was a personal guy. And, you know, he was the dean of men. So he had to be like kind of a dad, which means he had to play good cop, bad cop. But overall, like, yeah, you knew he cared. And at the end of the day, he was just kind of a big teddy bear. I mean, he was just a lovable guy. And so, yeah, so much good could be said. And that gets me thinking, we've all emphasized the aspect of how relational he was. And Mike, I know that's been the focus of your new season of Worldview, which is really kind of what we're here to talk about, is this idea of discipleship. Now, Nate and Bryan, you guys have developed discipleship curriculums. Nate, you've got the Money Wise course that you and your dad made a video series about stewardship, essentially. And then Bryan, you're developing based off your latest book, Rescued. And while we know that curriculum is needed and necessary, as Michael testified, having a curriculum of any kind is really empty if you don't have a relational aspect to go along with your discipleship. And so that's really kind of what the crux of the conversation where we're trying to go today. And so I think it might be good to do this. Let's take a moment. And first of all, yeah, let's talk about the two guys on which, Mike, you've also developed many a curriculum yourself. So feel free to chime in on this aspect as well. But I want to specifically spotlight Nate and Bryan's small group programs that you guys have put together. Nate, I'll let you start. We'll just kind of work there and then go over to Bryan there. Nate, you talk a little bit about Money Wise, and then Bryan will talk a little about Rescue.
Yeah, so with Money Wise, a few years ago, I started being asked by pastors, hey, would you come to our church, just take a weekend, financial health weekend, talk about what the Bible teaches about finances, but then give our people some practical instruction on, budgeting, spending, investing, generosity, all these types of things. But what I was finding is you can only cover so much in a weekend, and retention is pretty minimal from a weekend. And there was just really, I think, a need for a little bit more there. And just about every church has done the Ramsey Financial Peace University, amazing program, very, very helpful. But I think a lot of churches were looking for a little bit of a change of pace, maybe a little bit of a different angle on finances, not so much, baby steps, do this, but a little bit more of the philosophy around how we view money, how we approach money from a biblical worldview. So last year I spent a lot of time developing this 8-week series with video lessons. I think like a lot of small group curriculum these days, churches love something where there's some video instruction, but then there's time for discussion and something that's a little bit more plug and play, where you don't necessarily have to have somebody who has a finance degree to teach it. You have a moderator guide, you have discussion questions. You just need somebody to sort of quarterback the discussion and keep it on track. And so just trying to develop a resource that allows people to understand, here's what the Bible says about money. Everything belongs to God. We are the managers. What is the role that you want money to play in your life? And then just really trying to think through biblical principles and how they apply to our saving, how they apply to our giving, how they apply to our spending, and helping people to really back up a second and not just focus on the what they're doing, but really the why behind it. We've had a great response so far. A lot of churches that have really embraced Money Wise and said, hey, this is exactly what we were looking for, and a great, I think a great companion piece, honestly, for a lot of churches that use financial peace to kind of supplement that with a little bit of a different approach. So that's Money Wise in a nutshell.
And it's great. Yeah. We've done it twice at River City. Nate was also here back in May himself. I highly recommend it. Very, very good. We got a great guy that is the moderator here at the church. Tremendous. So we use it and we'll use it again. Mine's basically a companion to the book. I turned it into an 8-week video Bible study. And basically what it is my book, when Kurt Skelly read it and wrote the foreword, one of the things he said was, when you start reading Rescued, you quickly realize it's not an adoption story only. It's this biblical narrative about faith and the miraculous and prayer and all, these sorts of things. So I said, well, why not take those biblical principles and turn it into an 8-week series? So each week there's me giving an overview of the biblical part of it, about 15 minutes, and then there's a companion PDF question discussion that goes with it, so that the moderator can then turn around and basically, the idea is that you've read the book or read the chapter, and then you'll hear me talk for 15 minutes, and then the 45 minutes remaining would be discussion based stuff in a small group setting. So that's what Rescued is. You can go to bryansamms.com/rescued and see how you can order the small group material there as well.
Yeah, and I have had the privilege of editing MoneyWise, and Bryan, at the time of recording, I will be editing yours soon, so I'll get a sneak peek. But I could say MoneyWise, excellent content, really, really good. Bryan, I know yours is going to be good based on just the book and everything there. And this is where, both you guys take this video approach. And Mike, I want you to get your thought on this. Some are going to critique that. They're going to say, oh, that's not personal enough, right? Like, oh, it's just some guy on a video talking. But here's my pushback on that. Both of your video courses are designed to be about 15 to 20 minutes of video. And then, like you both said, the remainder is actually discussion. Here's what happens when you get a person leading. They love to monologue, or they think they have the gift of teaching, whether they do or not. That's for you to decide. They will just take essentially the hour you've got blocked for small groups or classes or whatever, and they will just monopolize that, leaving no opportunity for discussion or relationships. And Mike, I think that's where you come in here to chime into this conversation. You, as you've said in your podcast, this latest season of your podcast, you've had a part in developing many, many curriculums. However, you've noticed a big gaping hole in this relational aspect. And I'd like for you to speak to that.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Luke. Before I start, let me just say, hey, at Emmanuel, we're using Nate's material as well. And it has gone over well. The video has not been a distraction at all, because we have guys in the classroom that are leading it and have the discussion. So here's sort of the journey that I have taken. I've been in higher education for 30 years. That's sort of hard to believe. 30 years. So when I first started teaching, I wanted to have so much content because I did not want anybody to ask a question, because I was afraid if they asked a question, I wouldn't be able to answer it. And so I figured if I could just talk for 50 minutes straight, nobody would have time. I could just say, just see me after class, and I could get a head start and look the answer up type thing. So I was delivering great content, and the content kept getting better and better because I was just working hard. But then there was this I don't know, just next step was like, people have questions. They're staring at me sometimes, or they feel like they're just waiting to ask, but I'm not giving time. So then I said, hey, let's stop maybe 5 minutes early. Who has a question? Who has a question? So that became part of my. But by the time I was leaving West Coast and moving into Veritas, it was more of almost, I guess, the Socrates method, the Socratic method, teaching by asking questions. So when I got here to Emmanuel, where I serve part-time here in Connecticut, I oversee our groups, I oversee spiritual formation. And so I'm leading groups. I have small groups. I will sometimes have a home group. So in this setting, the way I prep now, as opposed to the way I prepped 30 years ago, I walk into class with 5 questions. And those questions are going to be my guide. I know the destination. I don't really care how I get to the destination. I'll prod and push, whatever. But what I love seeing is people just speaking in from their perspective, from their experience. We're moving forward. And then somebody's hearing a story that resonates with their story. They're finding commonality they didn't know they had. Now they're talking after class. Now they're meeting up for a coffee. And all of a sudden, there's all of this just organic health that's just formulating, because it's not just friendships based on, sorry, Bryan, the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not a fan of, but I know you are.
That's a pretty big deal. Yeah.
But it's not just those kind of, it's friendships that have formed as a result of being centered around a gospel theme, a Christian community. And so now there's people that, to me, it just reminds me of the New Testament. The early church, they just sort of did life together. Anyway, I'm talking too much, but I'll get that started. Let you guys sort of chime in.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I think. I think it opens up pathways for a lot of other things too. I mean, you think of the average guy out there that would be flat intimidated for the need to prepare a 50-minute lecture. I mean, what guys or gals in your church right now feel totally equipped to prepare a 50-minute lecture on John chapter 1, and they're going to fill the whole space with that? It's intimidating. So the ability to raise up leaders under this style of teaching is also really, really good. I mean, think about the moderators with Nate's curriculum. They watch the video that has the content, and basically they're leading in questions, and it's a healthy way to help leaders also be enabled. And it's also a little bit more natural. I mean, I think about the average, I've been in Sunday school classes where quite literally it's like a miniature church service. I mean, they
Sure.
sing a hymn, they take
Yep.
an offering, and then then there's preaching basically. And at some point, if you don't vary up your approach, you're probably not going to even hit every learner, right? I mean, we've all been there in education. You just got different people that are moved different. And I think we've got our main preaching time. That's the main lecture monologue, if you will. I think if you can vary it up, you really accomplish two additional things besides what you've already said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, and you're an amazing teacher. I was in your classes. It's this weird, ironic thing, right? Where it's like that meme, with the bell curve. You seen that where it's like the idiot and the savant have the same answer to the problem, and everybody in the middle has like a really complicated answer. Some of you will get the reference, but it's like this whole idea of what you said, the questions. It's like that sounds so simple, but it actually takes a masterful teacher to be able to do that and guide that conversation in the right direction. But Bryan, to your point, I think that's exactly where we're at in this moment, which is, first of all, there is a time and a place for us to sit under the preaching and teaching of the Bible and to absorb and to just listen. But for all of us, because of different learning styles, there needs to be times and opportunities for us to do it in a more collaborative way. And also there's humility in that process, because humility says, I don't have all the answers. And I'm not always going to be the best at articulating a particular point. And that's why when you get input from the entire group, you're going to have somebody in the group that hardly ever speaks up, but they're going to give a personal story. And it's going to be like, that is better than any illustration that I could ever come up with. And we're better as a group from getting everybody's input. And so, yes, in practice, it can be tricky. I mean, you definitely have to be purposeful in how you go about it. But I think ultimately it's a lot more powerful and more impactful being able to do some of these small groups this way.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Mike.
I was reading a book years ago. It sort of just impacted me. It was a book called Tally Ho the Fox. It's just an interesting title. Tally Ho the Fox. In it, this guy is writing about discipleship. You have to look it up to see the reference. It's a really cool reference. But in his introduction, he says, here's the problem in American churches. We have people auditing in the auditorium. We've turned the auditorium into a place where just people come and just passively listen. The active engagement, the active learning, the active just hands-on and participating, not just watching the clock until it's time to go to lunch. It just sort of resonated with me that people need to engage in the service.
Yeah, and I think to the point of like relational as a method of discipleship too. I think the old school way of teaching and training was exclusively linear. Like we thought that discipleship was the sum total of numbers 1 through 13, right? Lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3 to 13 equals disciple. And I found that I think real discipleship, at least in the church setting, is much more organic. And I have found as a pastor that real discipleship happens when two things happen. One, somebody needs to know something, or two, somebody needs to grow in something. So real discipleship, need to know, need to grow. So you're in a class, right? And you need to learn something. You're asking a question. I walked into a young fan. I went this the other day to a small group at our church. Sometimes I just kind of move around. This was a home group. And I walked in. This is all military couples. They're in their 20s, young, only like one even has a kid. These are super young. I walked in and I said, I want to come. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to teach. I don't want to talk. I just want to listen. I want to be a part of it. I sat down. They opened their Bibles to 1 John, and they were in chapter 2, I think it was. And one lady piped right up and said, Pastor, well, since you're here, last week we came across this passage. I think it was about the anointing or something. And they said, we couldn't decide. So what is this all about? You know? And what was that? It was a need to know. They were sitting there discussing the Bible and they didn't know what, nobody had an answer. So they asked me a question. They all learned something about the Bible. They grew, they learned something. But then there's that thing where you got somebody in your small group who's struggling with their money or something. And they come up to you and they say, man, I saw this, man. I've never had a budget. Can you help me with a budget? All of a sudden somebody needed to grow in an area and you were able to address that. And that doesn't always fit real easy into curriculum if you're not careful. So and one more thing, and then I want to pass it off, but one more thing I found about pastoring too is sometimes pastors and leaders get so distracted with other responsibilities, they fail to realize that our main responsibility is to preach the word and to encourage and teach the body, to be there for the body. And we fill our schedules with so many other things. People become interruptions when the truth is just being with people. As soon as I hang up here, I mean, I'm going to a meeting with a couple, and that's a relational, personal, developmental thing that goes a long way with people. And so you can't do that if you never have the time to sit down with people and discuss their life, discuss the scriptures. And so I think this is becoming much more of a need and much more of a practical output of real learning in the church. So.
Yeah. And the question that I think trying to maybe play devil's advocate a little bit, because here's the pushback that I've heard of, because what we're talking about here is kind of encouraging questions, right? And we've all kind of been exposed to ministry philosophies where you don't question anything, right? And so, the devil's advocate position is, okay, well, what happens then if you set everybody free in their little, groups and home groups to ask questions? What happens if they start to teach each other heresy?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, you should be careful as to who you appoint as a leader. I mean, first of all, I think, there's plenty in scripture about being cautious about newness, about like 2 Timothy 2:2, train other faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. Don't be so desperate to throw, we're going to have 5 home groups this summer. I know we've only got 20 people. Look, if you're in that average small church, there might only be 1 or 2 groups, and you're likely going to be the one teaching one of those groups. But be very careful at who you pass that leadership to. I think that's probably the most important thing. Somebody that has enough sense to be able to steer the conversation. Don't be so desperate for groups that you don't have able-bodied and spiritually grounded people to get in that position. So, obviously, I think if you're doing it right, that's one of the weaknesses of some of the mega churches I see. I mean, they're just groups everywhere, and the kind of people that are leading those groups, I know firsthand from one of the big churches here in the area. I'm like, that person's leading a group. Y'all should have probably rethought that one a little bit. And I still think there's a place for raising up leaders. And if somebody's leading a group in a church, I think they should be somebody who's shown some spiritual maturity, or you definitely could get in trouble.
Yeah, it's somewhere here in Connecticut. We try to identify which groups are official church groups. We realize that people may have unofficial groups. We can't stop that. We're not even going to try to control that. But for the groups that are a part of the umbrella of the church that we are using to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, to help them grow in being conformed to the image of Christ, there's a vetting process for who leads those groups. There's training detailed for those who would be leading those groups. And then just as we are wanting those facilitators to build authentic relationships with those in the groups, we in leadership are building authentic relationships with those that are leading so that we can sort of keep our pulse on any potential problems I just don't think you let fear of an extreme situation keep you from
Exactly.
doing something that is healthy for the body as a whole. So,
Yeah, and I
and on,
think one thing I've learned about the subject of really control and legalism overall, when you leave that mindset, what ends up happening is in that space, fear can come because I know for me when I kind of tried to massage out of a legalistic mindset as a pastor, one of the things that set in with me at the beginning was a fear of, well, what if? I mean, I kind of you lose control of people in somewhat. I mean, and stop trying to control their lives down to the detail. And I think when you're willing to just, people are going to be people, and people are going to ask questions, and they're going to be thinking sometimes different than you do. Do I have to have full unanimous consent on everything I believe or say, or I can't handle it? I think that's a weakness in the leadership, that he can't have people around him that see things maybe differently. I'm not talking about major things. There's been guys who've told me, for instance, they weren't 6-day literal creationists, and I told them on the front end, you're not going to be able to teach here. I'm not going to let you teach here. I mean, I still think there's things that are priorities to me that I think should go with leadership expectations or whatever the case may be, like you were addressing. But beyond that, what is the problem if people are asking questions and I think it's great. I mean, I had a guy ask me about on a brand new Christian. A guy was an atheist 6 months ago, told me he's an atheist, and he got saved 2 weeks ago at our church. He's in Discipleship. That's who I'm seeing it to this afternoon. I mean, he was asking me about speaking in tongues and all, because I mean, he's brand new to the Bible. He's reading the book of Acts. Well, hey, listen, I better buckle up because he's going to have some really interesting questions,
sure.
over the next several weeks. So what am I going to do? Just, bro, we just believe this and this. And he's not going to buy that. He's not going to buy that. His questions are going to have to be, he's going to have to be able to work and think through that. And I think we got to be willing to let go our control. I think that's a big issue. I'm sorry. I think I may have cut Nate off or somebody off.
Nate, what do you have to say there?
well, and that was exactly where I was going, Brian. Was the flip side of this is this idea that, okay, we're worried about other people having control because maybe they'll say something that is out of bounds, but it also puts this unnecessary pressure on ourselves to be like, I have to have all the answers, and we don't have all the answers. And I think there's a tendency for church leadership to want to skip right towards the results that we're looking for. I want to see people give more. I want to see people be more engaged. I want to see people have healthier marriages. So let me skip right to the behaviors that I want to see in your life and talk about that. Here's how often you need to be volunteering. Here's how much you need to be giving. Here's exactly when you need to be in service and where you need to. And it's like all of that is downstream from discipleship. It's downstream from the fruit of the Spirit. And if we'll be patient and trust the Holy Spirit to do his work on the inside, the results will be much better than what we could preach towards. And I've seen this specifically in the context of finances. And that is, I think there's a hesitancy for a lot of people to want to join the finance class because they feel like it's almost signaling, I'm in this class because I'm not good with money. I only signed up for the class because this is my Hail Mary. Like I don't know what else to do. So let me see if I can get some solutions here. And what I've tried to help churches and those who are leading the class to do is to say, hey, make sure that you're positioning this to your churches. This is not for the people who are struggling with money. This is for all of us. It's like a marriage conference or marriage retreat. This is not just for marriages that are struggling. This is something that all of us need to work on. None of us have arrived. And when you get that strata of people in the same room, people who are doing great with money, people who are struggling with money, it creates this environment where we can be a little bit more open and honest with each other. And we don't have to have one person who's got all the answers on exactly what you need to do in your finances. We can talk about it collectively and meet each other where we're at. And I think that's the danger on the other side of that. So.
Great point. Yeah, I think back to one more comment about the control aspect. I think, I feel like I was trained, and my mindset in the world pretty much all my training came from was the pastor has all the information. He is like Superman. And look, it makes you really vulnerable when you sit across the table with somebody and you might get a question that, God forbid, I may have to say, man, you know what, honestly, I have no idea. In fact, this came up, Mike. This is an interesting one. I know you probably appreciate this, but in 1 Corinthians 15, Paul talks about being baptized for the dead. You know the verse I'm talking about?
I knew that was the verse he was going to say.
Bro, I am telling you right now, that came up. I did a basic theology elective last fall, a basic theology elective, and that came up on the floor. And I'm telling you, I probably look like I just fell off a dumb truck. I mean, I don't know how many times I preached 1 Corinthians 15. I don't know how in all of my reading of the Bible, I don't think I've ever stopped to even think about it. And I just looked at the guy and said, man, I just got you, man. I'm just going to be honest with you. You totally stumped me. I have no earthly idea what that verse is talking about. Of course, I went back and I did a quick, 10-minute research. It wasn't hard to go, oh, yeah, da, 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 da. But man, as a senior pastor with some education in my background, to look at a man in my church and say, man, I've never even thought about that. You have to be willing that you don't have all the answers on some tough Bible questions. And the fact of the matter is, I could pin any one of you down. You could pin me down. There's somewhere in the Bible where you're going to go, yikes. I don't know, man. I need to look that up. And we have to be okay with that, in terms of helping people solve their problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was a time when, and I think in a positive way, this is fading away now, but there was a time where, it was whatever the man of God says, go. And really, unfortunately, in some extreme context of that, it was, you were a church founded on what your pastor said, not necessarily on what the Bible said. And so as a result of that just mindset, we got a lot of churches now that are built off of monologuing rather than dialoguing. They come, like you were saying, I think Mike or Brian, one of you were saying, they come to their small group or their Sunday school class, whatever you want to call it, and they just hear a second sermon. There's no space for dialogue, for conversation. And I think that's the benefit, again, of utilizing a tool like a MoneyWise or a Rescued or some type of video course, because then it's like, all right, we got an hour slotted for groups here. You're only going to get 15 to 20 minutes of actual monologue teaching. From there, you got to figure it out. That said, I understand that not every church is going to tap into a resource like that. So, Mike, I think this is where I would ask you, how does maybe a church or a ministry or even a specific class or small group that, maybe they've been a little monologue heavy, how do they start to transition into that more, to open up that dialogue, that conversation, and thereby being more relational in their discipleship approach?
Yeah, I don't know that it's a one size fits all, but here are some practical steps. First of all, there needs to be a welcoming environment where people realize they're actually coming into not a second service. So this is why homes work for us. Homes, if I invite somebody in my home, the expectation isn't for you to sit on my couch and listen to me for 45 minutes. The dynamic just changed. I think another way to change that dynamic, if we don't want to go to homes, is in our classrooms. At church, we don't have to stand behind a podium or a pulpit or a lectern. We can sit at a table. We can invite people around tables. We can make circles, not rows, as the saying goes. But whatever we can do to break through the mindset of this is a chance for me to just be a passive listener, as opposed to the expectation being an active participant. Part of that's the setting, the environment. The second part of that is the mindset of the leader. It's a totally different way to prepare to lead a class from those two different models. I mentioned earlier, when I started teaching singles in Lancaster 30 years ago, we would write our curriculum out, and basically you just hope that you would get it finished before the quote unquote the bell rang, right? I just got to get through my material. Well, you're prepping for that all week. You're looking up correlating verses, all that. But in an environment where you're inviting dialogue, you start with the end in mind. This is what I want the people in this class to walk away with: this truth, this principle, this promise. I don't know how the Lord's going to take us there because there's all these dynamic factors of the people in the class. But I'm going to come with a set of pre-planned questions to sort of just move us there. And I'm just going to stop. I think the hardest part is learning how to embrace the awkward silence.
Mm-hmm.
For me, in this transition, I would ask a question, And if nobody answered within 5 seconds, like, oh, okay. So I just wanted you to think about that mentally. Here's the answer, because I didn't like the silence.
Yeah.
But now the silence doesn't bother me. And I'll just say that, this past week, I'm sure maybe some of you have had this, you've seen this principle at work. How would you see this verse applying to your life? And I will just stop just like that.
We're doing a
Eventually
real good job with that awkward silence, by the way, guys. Well done.
Thank you.
Man, I was like, I was there. I was feeling that. Yeah.
But then eventually somebody breaks the ice. And
Yeah.
then when somebody breaks the ice, then somebody else feels empowered to do it.
Yep.
Sometimes it may be as simple as going to a guy in the class or a lady in the class that, thinks very similar to you and say, hey, I'm going to ask this question today, and I want to have a dialogue. Could you, after 30 seconds, if nobody answers, could you jump in with a thought? And then we'll start the conversation. There's just practical things you can do to just move it to that direction. But then once people
I
know
think
that you're
that-
expecting the participation,
Yeah.
they thrive. Oh, like part of this change in their mind. They've been trained to just sit, listen, maybe
Yeah.
take notes. So you're changing your mindset as a teacher. You're changing their mindset as a listener. It just takes patience.
100%. Yeah. When we started this, have a more connection group concept, the way we onboarded it is that we did sermon-based follow-up at the beginning, which necessitates, because there's no lesson. So what we did was we had our leaders and the students, we had the sermon questions posted to their group resource tab prior to the sermon. So they could actually come in listening to the sermon with the questions in mind, almost like pre-applying the message. And that seemed to go over real well. We probably will go back to that, but I think it's a really good way to onboard because everybody has that one thing in common. Everybody knows we're talking about the sermon. It also makes curriculum a really, really simple thing, particularly if you're using something like Sermon Shots or some other AI platform that takes your sermons and basically has a discussion guide built in. Which we found really helpful. We're not doing that currently, but that was the way how we started, and I felt like we got some good traction when we shifted there.
Yeah. Mike, thank you for everything you just said about like the practical aspects of running a small group, because that's gold. Like the seating layout, pausing, like all of those things. I wish every moderator of a small group would get that, because it really takes it to the next level. One other thing I would add to everything that you said from sitting in classes myself, if it's ideally, I think if you have less than 20 people, that's great for conversation. Once you get over about 20 people, it becomes very intimidating for about half of the class to want to say anything. And one thing I've seen done in some classes that I've been a part of is you have a group discussion time, but then you break out even further into smaller groups and get people in groups of 4 to 6, because there will be people that have something to say and will add something great to the conversation, but they'll never say it in front of 30 people, but they'll say it in front of 3 other people. And
that's
Great.
Yeah.
Great
Really
thought.
good.
Well, honestly, man, back to, to that point, I don't think people realize how much people are totally terrified of speaking in front of people. It's a real thing. It's bizarre to me to think about it because I love it. But man, I can't believe how many people they're like, I would never, ever speak up in a group ever. And there are going to be people like that. So you got to be careful of that too. But I think it's going to be more natural when you get a conversation going. People are going to speak and then some are going to feel empowered. But that's a really good observation too, Nate. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, Nate, I remember to that. I remember my early years of ministry, if you want to call it. I was a Christian school teacher. And as part of my annual, certification, I had to go to this clinic. And the guy who led the clinics here in the state of Tennessee was a big question-based teacher. He would give about a 5 to 10 minute kind of leg of his talk. And then he had all the Christian school teachers, at least in this association, all spread across this gymnasium at round tables. And then he said, okay, so now your table is going to discuss this. and here's the question to ask. And then he would, of course, then you'd have to nominate someone on the table to stand and share your answer with everybody in the room. So that part was great. But I just remember it encouraging, like you were kind of saying, that it was like that organic small group built in even into a large group. Because I think that's another thing that people say. They say, well, I've got these, maybe this is more of a maybe larger churches, but like, hey, we already have these large classes of 20 plus people, right? So how do we break that group up further to have conversations? And Mike, it goes back to, maybe something as simple as positioning your seating around round tables instead of in rows might do something like that, or might encourage that conversation more. Well, guys, this has been, I think, really helpful. And I know we could keep on going, to have a discussion like this, and maybe we'll regroup again sometime and revisit this topic. But I just want to kind of give everybody the opportunity to say, kind of any final thoughts. Share again where we can connect with you. Like get your, Bryan, talk about your book, your course, Nate, your podcast course, Mike, your podcast and what you've got going on. And so, let's start with Nate, then we'll go Bryan, Mike.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate this conversation. Bryan and Mike have been incredible influences and such a positive force in my life. And Luke has been a great friend for a long time, so I always enjoy getting a chance to talk with you guys. Yeah, as far as MoneyWise goes, moneywisecourse.com. If you want to find more info about it, order it for your church. And if you ever have any questions, want to get a hold of me, info@nateskelly.com is the best place to reach me.
Yeah, so bryansams.com is a great place to connect with me. All of my social handles are at Preacher Samms, and would love to connect with you guys. Of course, the book is on pre-sale right now, bryansams.com/rescued. And Mike, I know I don't get to talk to you a lot, but I just want to say I appreciate you. We had so many great years together on the faculty hallway of West Coast Baptist College, and your friend. I always say God gives you people for a reason, for a season, for a lifetime. And although we don't get to talk a lot, that season was such a great season for me and you and Toby England. We kind of wish he was here right now. We're just such rich, iron sharpening friends, and much appreciated. And I'm excited about your podcast getting jumped back up. So,
yeah, appreciate it. Connecting with me, jmichaellester.com. You'll find a podcast there. If you're interested in what God is doing at Veritas Baptist College, where I serve as president, vbc.edu. If any way I can help connect, I'd love to. It's been a blessing for me to connect with you guys again. Nate, I remember you coming as a student, terrified to have you in my class because I knew who your dad was. And so I was just in my mind, like, if I blow it, it's going straight to the top. And just have enjoyed watching how God has just used you and opened up doors of ministry. And thankful even how your ministry is impacting our church at Emmanuel as we use the material there. Bryan, I'm looking forward to using Rescued in our small groups setting as well when it comes out. And anytime I go to Chipotle, I think of you, man. You're the one who introduced me to that restaurant. And so I think of you often.
One of my great positive character traits.
Yeah. I don't know if you affected me spiritually, but man, I really appreciate it. No, I've enjoyed our friendship, and sure appreciate what God's using you to do there in Jacksonville and all the other different outlets you have for ministry. Hey, Luke, thanks for putting this together for us, and look forward to what God's going to do in the future with each of us.
Yeah, well, thanks again for time. Side note, Mike, way back in the day when I took your discipleship class as a freshman at West Coast Baptist College, I promised you that I would make you a discipleship video. Let's count this as the fulfillment of that promise.
All right.
This is a video.
I was going to say I'm still waiting.
We're talking about discipleship. So
love it. You are off the hook.
But seriously, it's been good talking with you guys. And so for the Worldview, Financial Pathway, and Church Events podcast, we thank you for listening. Be sure that you subscribe to YouTube channels, follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, and tune in for the next episode. We'll see you in that one.
God bless, guys.
All right, nice.